Trust me, guys. I know I should be doing this live, but it doesn't let me go live. YouTube, for some reason. I reached past them 50 subscribers, but it's just not working. So, since I had 6K, you know what that means, right? We are going to be doing. So, this, I do not even want to say this. We are going to be saying subscribe 600 times. Yeah. So this better get views for my hard work. Okay, ready? I'm going to be showing. I'm just doing it with, this is my dad's old phone, by the way, and I'm recording on my phone. Ready? And I'm just going to use these laps to count. Ready? Hey, it's me on the reflection. 3, 2, 1. Wait. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. We're at subscribe. We're at 13 right now. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Here, that you can see. If you're wondering why my fingernail's red, it was bleeding today real bad because I fell. So, subscribe, subscribe. Here, let me show you that I'm actually clicking it every time I say subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. I can barely even say it right. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. I can't say it. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Guys, we're at 46 right now. Subscribe, 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 I wish I could just do sub. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, we're at 66 now. Subscribe, 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 I can't say it. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Now, guys, we have just reached 100 saying subscribe. That's crazy. Subscribe. I don't know what's happening. Subscribe. Now we're at 110. Subscribe. I can't say it. Subscribe. Oh my, I can barely even say it, guys. Trust me. We got 130 now. Subscribe. Here, let me just show you. Subscribe. My fingers. Not right. Subscribe. I know you're like probably do this faster, but I can barely even say it. It's just such a long word because you guys just won't subscribe. It's long for you guys not to. I'm kidding, guys. You always subscribe. Subscribe. We just reached 160, guys. Let's go. Subscribe. Hold on. Drink break. Guys, the camera was actually standing on this, but now it's there, and I'm just going to set the camera back up leaning on this. We need to take a drink break. By the way, I paused the timer because I'm actually going to time myself. There you go, guys. By the way, look at the little corgi. And by the way, there's Pepsi inside of here. Okay, so this is how much we're at right now. Let's start it again. Subscribe. Subscribe, 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 Bro, what am I? I can make that voice. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 180 guys. Okay, I think my voice might be. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, now we're boosting up. We got 197. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. 200. Let's go. We're speeding. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, I paused the timer again because I'm getting cold and I'm turning the fan off. Okay, let's just let it stay like that. Okay, see, timer's paused. Now I'm going to unpause it. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, I'm actually going to be tired after doing this. My voice might be a little bit cranky. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Now I'm boosting up. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 243 guys. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. And then add that one. Subscribe. 250 guys. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Does that count? 2? No, only 1. Okay, subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I cannot say it. Subscribe. And then add that one. So we got, so far, 271. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, I'm not going to time myself anymore because, like, I'm showing you how much I have and all that. So that timer doesn't really matter. Subscribe, 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 I said it wrong. I just said scribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 300, baby. 300, just 300. 0, and then 0. More. We're not even close. Okay, subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. I'm just going to do that. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. I cannot, bro. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Ooh, what am I doing? Subscribe, subscribe. Guys, this counts. This counts. Look, guys, Sadie said subscribe. That counts. Sadie said it. Sadie said it. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Like I'm like changing voice. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And you heard what Sadie said. She said subscribe. Actually hit the subscribe button. Or else. Okay, you hit the subscribe button. And you smashed it. And you smashed the like button. Thank you. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, we are almost at 400. And it's only been almost 10 minutes. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, that doesn't count. Subscribe, 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 I said prize. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 400. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. What's it so? Never mind. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 420 right now. Subscribe, subscribe. My mouth, like I can barely even talk, like it's hurting. That's why I'm taking drink breaks. Guys, by the way, I just want to show you that I got these, and I really like them. So they're Taki sunflower seeds. I don't know why. I had to put the shells away. Yeah, and they're really good. I like licking this off before I do it, like, because it actually tastes really good. Like, sour flea break. I mean, I guess eating break. Okay, let's get back to the video. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Actually, please subscribe. And I just said it again, subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, that doesn't count. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 470. Oh my God. This is kind of crazy. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. I can barely even say it. We're just almost at 500. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, we are almost at 600. Look, we're at 505. That only means 95 more. And guess what? Since I'm going to say it 600 times, you gotta subscribe. All of you guys have to subscribe this video. This video better get 600 subscribers on it. Gained. What else? Why did I do that? Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, that's enough. What is singing? Subscribe, 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 subscribe. 530. Okay. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I'm saying it wrong. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. My voice, oh, we're almost there, but my voice really hurts. Subscribe. Let's get Sadie in the background. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. We are halfway there. Well, not halfway. Never mind. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Sadie, please say it for me so I can get more. Because my voice is hurting. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. My voice is already hurting. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Thank you, Sadie. Now we have 573. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Okay, the rhyme, like, that doesn't count. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Guys, we're almost there. 585. My voice. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. For subscribe. Subscribe, 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 subscribe. The last one. Subscribe. 600! Oh, we did it! Yes! Yes! Oh my god, my voice hurts so much. Make sure, guys, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. See? 600 times. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. See you guys in the next ones. Peace out. I farted.